Welcome to the Good Faith Bible Studies podcast. I'm your host, Craig Nash, Senior Editor at Good Faith Media. Each episode, we explore and discuss the weekly texts and lessons found in Good Faith magazine. For the July, August, and September 2026 installment of the Bible Studies, I'll be inviting special guests to join me in sharing our thoughts and ideas about the passage and ways small groups might approach each week's lesson. We are glad you're here, so let's dive in. This week's passage is from Luke chapter 16, verses 19 through 31. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, "Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire." But Abraham replied, "Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you, a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from here to us." He answered, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so that they will not also come to this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." So as we have gone through these parables of Jesus found in Luke, I have found myself in these first impressions sharing. Each parable is situated within the story of Jesus that Luke is telling. As I've said many times, many of these parables were teed up for Jesus by some event that happened. Often, as has been the case in the last few weeks in the parables that we've talked about, these events have involved the Pharisees grumbling about Jesus expanding his table to include people the Pharisees would rather not be included. And some of the parables, like the parable of the shrewd manager or the foolish manager, depending on how you look at it, that we talked about last week, are the event that teed up the Pharisees grumbling. Today's parable, the one of Rich Man and Lazarus, not only feels like one of the other kinds of parables, the one that Luke just kind of drops in the middle of nowhere, it feels especially so because at the end of this parable in Luke 17, Jesus shifts to teaching his disciples certain lessons that seem somewhat unrelated to what has appeared before. So this seems like one of those just kind of dropped in the middle of the text parables. Most of you who are listening to this podcast are doing so because you use Good Faith Bible Studies that are located in Good Faith Magazine, which comes to you 4 times a year. Just a little peek behind the scenes as we compile the stories that appear in that magazine. We often take the submissions that we've been given and try to figure out kind of how they fit best within the flow of the magazine. Sometimes I end up with a really great submission that I want to include, but there's not really a great place to put it. So either I hold on to it for a future issue or I do everything I can to make it fit because I believe it is just that important. And the placement of this parable feels a little bit like that. Like Luke knew it needed to be in his gospel and there wasn't really a good place for it, so he placed it there. That's how it felt like for me when I first read it. As we will study the passage a little bit later and the curriculum, we'll see that it's not necessarily like that. And then lastly, as is the case with most of our parables we've looked at, this one raises as many questions as it answers. Is this a condemnation of wealth? Is it a message about heaven and hell? Is it about pitting the first covenant against the new covenant? When we return, we'll explore some of those issues. We'll explore the dilemma of interpreting this parable, and we will be right back. And this week's lesson in Good Faith Bible Studies was brought to us by Jennifer Garcia Bayshaw. Jennifer is the Associate Professor of New Testament and Christian Ministry at Campbell University in North Carolina, and she is the nerd in residence for the Bible for Normal People podcast. Also this week, I have a special guest. I've been flying solo for the last few weeks, but I am here with Jason Edwards. Jason is the pastor of Second Baptist Church in Liberty, Missouri. Jason, welcome.
Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Jason and I have been friends for a little bit of time, 2-3 months maybe.
2-3 decades.
Yeah, 2-3 decades, a very, very long time. It's an honor to have him. Jason's an incredible preacher. He's an incredible writer. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this podcast. But first, Jason, as you've read this parable probably dozens or hundreds of times in your life, what are some of your first impressions of the story, where it fits, what it means?
Yeah, well, one of the things that jumped out at me may not be quite so obvious, but it is because I've read and studied the parable before. Jennifer talks a lot about the chasm between the wealthy and the poor in there. One thing that she doesn't mention is, and I could be wrong about this, but I think this is the only time in all of the parables of Jesus where one of the characters gets a proper name.
Oh yeah, when I was reading that, I thought that all of our parables before have been a woman, a beggar.
Yeah. So we had
Lazarus.
Yeah, so we had that here too, and the rich man does not have a name.
Mm-hmm.
In life, the rich man probably, as most of us do when we pass the poor,
he was the beggar. He was the panhandler,
right?
The guy at the intersection.
That's right. But in this parable is the only one that Jesus gives a proper name to. I think there's something going on there that's not just about the sociological or economic chasm between the rich and the poor, which I think is really important here. But I think it may have something to do also with their theological assumptions about wealth and about this idea of, we see this in other areas in Scripture too, where Jesus is saying, they ask, who sinned, this man or his parents? And Jesus is like, well, that's not really what's going on here. In this case, I think there is a sense, an embedded sense for them that a person who is wealthy is blessed, and a person who is sitting on the street having their sores licked by dogs is cursed. There's something that they have done to deserve this, and that somehow God is intertwined with what's going on. And yet what we see when the curtain of creation is pulled back is that the rich man is the nameless one, and the other one is the one who is with Abraham on the other side of the chasm. And so I think there's something going on here that Jesus is affirming by naming Lazarus, and also by kind of flipping the expectations around blessing.
Yeah, in a similar way where Jennifer points out, we are not told certain things that we kind of read into it, such in her angle, such as we are not told the rich man was evil. We're not told that the rich man denied anything to the beggar in this particular case, but it could be that the original readers already kind of imply. Do you sense that Jesus is telling this and the readers already have kind of that the beggar was the sinner and the rich man was not, kind of in the back of their minds?
Yeah, I mean, and Jennifer did some things I had never seen before, where she was talking about the two folk tales, two kinds of folk tales in the background, and those kinds of expectations there, which I think a lot of what's going on here is about, you mentioned perhaps something being kind of stuck in there, but I actually think this is part of a larger movement, and that a lot of it is about sight.
And more to that.
I was going back and looking at one of the setup passages for this, and just before this, you have that moment where he says, no one can serve two masters. Either you'll hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon. And then it goes on down, and he's saying to the Pharisees who are sneering at him, You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value is highly detestable in God's sight. And then you have this parable where I think part of the sense is whether or not someone like the rich man, who is probably more like us than Lazarus, sees Lazarus in life. You have this sense here that Lazarus is seen by God, is seen by Abraham. His name is known and remembered.
He was seen by whoever laid him there.
Yeah. Yeah. And how he's seen. And so I think also what Jesus is always doing is trying to help us understand how God sees things and how even we might see things if we saw things in light of the whole of reality, which includes both what we see in this life and what we cannot see, which is what's happening here, I think.
Yeah. We've talked about this in other podcasts before, particularly Hyung and I, and when Hyung Park and I did this several months ago. It seems like for many of us who are in kind of our world, it's almost impossible to read things like this without thinking about hell.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It's always in the background. Yeah. Is it possible for that not to be the case?
Well, I don't think it's possible because we bring that in with us, but this, it's like the things that are right in front of us in the text that we can't see because of the ways we've been taught to see, back to sight. And Hades is Sheol.
Yeah.
And so we know, I think we know, everybody may not know, Sheol is not heaven or hell. Sheol is the holding place of the dead.
Right.
So all of the dead went to Sheol. And so what we have here is we don't have, we have people divided in different aspects of Sheol. I guess if anything, it should challenge our sense that the biblical writers and readers and people in this time understood the afterlife the same way we do.
Yeah. If I were leading a group discussion on this, that would probably be the subject that either I would bring up or someone else would bring up. For you, if you're leading a small group in this, reading the passage and also going through Jennifer's lesson, how might you approach that in a way that might be engaging beyond just reading the passages in the lesson?
Well, the thing that just popped into my mind as you were saying that was C.S. Lewis's Great Divorce. And
this is what we like to give group leaders extra kind of resources that they could read, but also they could give their folks to read or watch or listen to.
And so the Great Divorce is kind of C.S. Lewis's parable on the afterlife, but the foundational idea is that it's all the same place.
Yeah.
And that you experience it differently based on your life on earth or your relationship with God. And so the basic idea, and I don't have the book in front of me, is that for some people, the blades of grass in the afterlife feel like knives cutting your feet.
Yeah.
It's almost that idea that the opposite of being with God is nothing. And so the further you get from God, the more you are not existent. And so your body can't tolerate God's reality. And the reason it made me think of that is if these people are both in the same place, the holding place of the dead, you have one person who is experiencing it as torment and the other one who is experiencing it as what we would call heaven.
Yeah, or paradise.
Paradise. But they're in the same place. There's a chasm.
And the passage bears that out because the rich man can actually see Lazarus.
Yeah.
It's a long way away, but he can see him. So it's not like a heaven hell type thing.
And is it a chasm of your own making?
Oh yeah. Lazarus could be right next to him like he had been before they died.
Yeah. I mean, who created that chasm? Is it possible that the chasm that the rich man is now aware of was created by the rich man?
Yeah. To thank you. Oh, before we move on, I want to mention Jason is the author of At Home with God, which is a book that's coming out in November. Do you want to talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah, At Home with God, the subtitle is How the Cross Transforms Us. Basically, what I do in the book is I imagine the atonement, or what Jesus accomplished on the cross, as a great house, and try to help give people a guided tour of the atonement by taking them through the rooms of the house, and each room is reflecting something different about what Christ accomplished on the cross.
It's great. It's an incredible book. Jason will be joining us for next week's lesson, and so maybe we'll talk more about it then. But thank you all for joining us, and we will be with you next week. I'm Craig Nash, and you've been listening to the Good Faith Bible Studies podcast from Good Faith Media. Our music comes from Pond 5. If you are not already a subscriber to Good Faith Magazine, learn more about how you can receive a copy of the magazine and Bible study curriculum at goodfaithmedia.org.